thank you. Thank you, Daryl, so much for being willing to do this. You heard my call of, I put it out there. Like, I'm looking for people to tell their stories. It doesn't matter if you're day one, hour one, day a million and one, whatever it might be. I'm just trying to decrease stigma and increase awareness in the hopes that people will watch these and not feel so alone. And so I just really appreciate that you're willing to do this. And I'm just honored that you're here. And I'm wondering if you would introduce yourself and then kind of let us know what your story is, as far as what was it like before you started your recovery journey?
Sure. My name is Daryl. I'm a single parent to one sassy teen here on the west coast of Canada in Vancouver, Metro Vancouver. And so life before recovery was chaotic, really. I was always, I wasn't really a yo-yo dieter. I in my head, I wanted to be, but it was always like, I can't do it. I can't do it, which I think is a repetitive voice I always have had in my head. I can't do it. And it was always flying by the seat of my pants, never meal planning or anything like that. Always lots of restriction, because I'd be like, oh, I might have had a hearty breakfast or something that had lots of calories or whatever. Well, I better not have lunch, or I might have had a piece of cake in the afternoon. Well, I better only have half my dinner. But then, of course, restricting led to binges all the time. And it kind of shifted through the years. Like in my 20s, I had a little more drinking involved then, so I wasn't really binging as much then. But I'll tell you right now, my favorite day of the week was Sunday night, where I could sit at home with my chocolate covered M&Ms and my Crystal Light, because that balanced it out in my brain, and tortilla chips with sour cream and salsa. That is, I can think of many Sundays where I did that. And then it was a few more days a week as I got older, less partying happening. After I became a parent, when you're breastfeeding, you get really hungry. I mean, in my experience, and in hindsight, I probably should have drank more water, really. But I was just like hungry. And that's when I think the binging really kind of started in full force, because before that I could limit myself to 3 or 4 cookies a night. I would buy a box and it would last me a week, and then all of a sudden I was going through a whole box in one sitting, and then I was eating a bag of chips along with that, and then lots of times I would just not eat dinner because I knew I was going to have a binge. I knew the back of my mind, I guess I knew I was going to have that binge, so I didn't want to, I would get rid of whatever calories I could, even though that is a pretty minimal amount when you think of the junk food I was consuming. And that was every day. And then I started to get a lot of knee pain and, of course, weight gain, because I'm getting older and it was coming on a little faster, and just feeling really hopeless. Depression. Like, I really, when I look back at it, I really think I was in the heap of a depression, and I didn't really know, because I went to work. I have friends. I didn't do a lot of social things because it started happening where like chairs were an issue. So I started becoming more isolated, and of course I would go out. The one good thing about being in a social setting in those days for me, in hindsight, is that that's when I would mindfully eat. And I would notice that I always noticed that I was full much faster, and I just assumed it was my anxiety. But in hindsight, I think it was because I was eating mindfully. I didn't want people to see me inhaling my food like I did in the comfort of my own home. And then I didn't even, never in my mind would I've ever thought about food addiction, but I'm part of a clinic here in BC, that a weight management clinic, and they had some sessions with Sandra Alia, and I was like, wait a minute, this makes a lot of sense. And that was like in April 2020 or so. It was right when the pandemic started, and I was like, wait a minute, this makes lots of sense. But I kind of just heard tidbits and sort of put it aside. And then I had to see a neurologist for some issues I was having with my legs and hips and stuff. And they couldn't really get a reading right. And she was like, well, she kindly told me in a manner that I needed to lose weight, which I knew. My doctor tiptoed around it, and she said it, I don't know, in a way that I heard her. It wasn't it wasn't shameful. It wasn't anything. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do keto. So I did keto. And then that I did really well for a while, but I still wasn't tackling the addiction. And of course, I wasn't too sure about it then. And then I came across Sandra Lee again, and I took her class again with this clinic. And I was like, okay, this is really making a lot of sense. And the codependency and stuff that what was talked about, which I know like me and my mom had a really codependent relationship. And every time I had a relationship with a significant other, it was the same thing. And I really wanted to break free of that. And then then what happened? Oh, and then Sandra did a 28-day recovery, and I was like, okay, what is this? And I want on board. So I did that in November 2021. And it was awesome. I had abstinence for quite some time. I wasn't keeping track, because to me that I didn't want to at that point. And I would say it was a few months, like say November to into the spring or something. I was like probably I wouldn't say I was 100%, but I was really, really mindful. And then just dropping into more groups on Facebook. And she introduced me to Dr. Vera Tarman and the Food Junkies podcast and everything. And then, I mean, fast forward, here I am today, attending the weekly or 5 days a week coaching classes with Sweet Sobriety, which I love. So I'm just constantly working. And at first in recovery, even though I did have that abstinence for quite some time, now that I look back, I really see I was white knuckling it. I was listening, I had all the tools, and I was like, yeah, I was meditating every day. I got my exercise going, which is fantastic, but I still wasn't like, so now my struggle is, creating a plan, I guess. So that's where I'm at. I want to put the tools to use. I have all this great knowledge on addiction and recovery, the skills and all this great work. And so now it's putting a plan into place, because I finally, after however long of listening and tuning into to the coaching classes and any podcast that there is, I need a plan. And as much as I want to avoid that, that's what I need.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? When you say you need a plan, do you mean like you need to actually like write down like step by step the things that need to happen to get what you want? Or do you mean the actual action part?
Kind of, I get both, sort of. Like the action, I guess what I mean by plan is not necessarily a food plan. I feel like for me, I like to do the plate, half veggies, quarter protein, quarter carbs. But like having a plan as far as, because I get really in the evenings, which I'm sure many can relate to, you get a craving and you're just like, boom, and I'll act, and I don't think, I don't pause. So what I would like to do is pause. But right now I pause and do what? So nothing. I'm like, I don't know what to do. There's lots of things I can do, but because I don't have it sort of scripted, like maybe, like just a notebook or something to just put, okay, I'm having a craving. Okay, why don't I do a meditation? Or I really love to learn song lyrics. So, if a new song comes out, just sit and do song lyrics. Just things like that. Or even when I go to like Christmas functions or I'm going to Mexico and at the end of March, maybe at the end of March. And I want to be able to know what to do next. Because sometimes I guess I just get into this, it's anxiety, right? And I get into that anxious mode, and then I just cave into the craving, and of course, then I'm feeling really remorseful after. With that being said, I don't hold on to that remorse anymore. I've done a lot of work, mirror works, like self-love work. So I talk to myself a lot kinder than I did at one time. And I feel like that makes a huge difference. Because then you don't want to, because before it would be like, oh, I feel so crappy. Well, I'll just do it again. So now I'm just like, okay, I'll talk to myself in the mirror and apologize to myself for not honoring myself or what have you. And I find that very helpful. So yeah, so basically back to the plan, it would basically be just like a guidebook, something I could refer to that's something I could put in my purse, something I could have with me all the time, because I really struggle with peer pressure, which I'm sure is a big one too, because it's like I forget. I get to the event and I'll have a plan and I just forget. Like, oh,
Right. So
oh
there's like
God.
this piece where it's like, it's almost like having the if then kind of plan. Like if this happens, then I'm going to do this, but then also
Yes.
the reminder piece of it. And as you were talking, and not that you asked me, but I did just want to share this, it came to me is that, in DBT or dialectical behavioral therapy, um, they will have clients either create for themselves or they have it available, note cards, like little index cards with the tool on them and like the if
Oh,
then situation, right? So like one has the if then situation and then the tool on the back, and they
okay.
hole punch them and they put them on a key ring, and they keep them in their purse or they keep them like on a hook somewhere that's
Oh, I
easy for
like
them to
that.
grab. I don't know. Just it just came to me as you were kind of talking about that, and
Yeah, I like
maybe
that because it's simple.
as
I
a
can have it
reminder.
all the time. Like I can, I can remember like, so basically that leaves me with just remembering to pause and then I can look, right? Like
Right.
right now I've got myself in a state of okay, I might pause, but now what? Now what?
Yeah.
And I mean, yes, I have lots of tools, but I don't have anything right now simplified in like that. That's actually a really great idea. I like it a lot.
Yeah, awesome. Well, if you try it out, let me know how it goes. If you need any support around it, definitely let me know because
Sure.
I'm happy to do that. So you mentioned a lot of like how life has been like before you started the recovery journey, and then you kind of started to mention some of the things that you're doing in recovery now. But because I want to talk to you about that for sure. But
Sure.
before we get there, can you kind of talk about like how do you find it in you to keep going? Because clearly you haven't given up. There's been this like process where, it looked one way and then maybe it looked like weight loss or addressing weight. And then you kind of like started getting these little like earworms from like Sandra or whatever. Right. So like you haven't given up, you keep going. Like, how do you do that? How do you keep the motivation or the momentum to keep
Uh,
trying?
to keep trying, mostly my why, and my why is my daughter. I really want to model to her that change can happen. I want to model to her that I want to model to her healthy habits and whatnot, because really at this point she's she's kind of the way I was. Very, she just she wants to eat crummy food all the time, and it's a tough one because I don't want to buy it, but then I'm kind of like, well, what is she going to eat? And so I want to model that to her, that change is possible and can happen. I want to go on adventures with her. There was a couple of years there I had, because my knees got so bad I couldn't do anything. Like I did take her to Las Vegas. It was right before the pandemic, and like in hindsight, I don't even know how I managed because I was in so much pain. And I don't want to be in that kind of pain again. When I stay away from sugars and white flour, I have a lot more, let's say, my joints are better oiled. I feel like I can move better. There's less pain. And I notice it like, um that's another thing I'd like to do, is kind of get more specific on what my triggers are and what foods aggravate my joints and whatnot. But I definitely, my keep going is that I want to do these things with my daughter, and I want peace. I want peace and neutrality. Like I was actually just watching This Is Us, and Kate talks about how food, has always controlled her life. And I was like, oh my gosh, me too. Me too. Like I think back to, oh my gosh, I was really young, like 7, and my parents had bought a bunch of stuff from it. Like we're from the rural Alberta, so like similar to Montana, right? Like lots of farming auctions and stuff. And they got to an auction, and my dad, he was a junk food fiend. He bought these cases of chips and like boxes of Smarties, like bulk, like not in the individually box, like this box of a big. And I can remember sneaking downstairs to get this any chance I could. And it blows me away. Like I can't even fathom my daughter doing that when she was that age. And I can remember like it really, food and well, and food, but I mean junk food, like processed foods and stuff, like really has had a control over me for a long, long time. And I don't want that anymore. I want peace. I have had the peace before by times when I've abstained before. And when I think back on it, I feel like the most peace I had was when I did keto. And I don't know if there's any correlation. Like I'm kind of interested to maybe try it again, but at the same token, I don't know. I'm not sure which food plan works the best for me, but I do like the plate method because it's simple.
Yeah. So the plate method because it's simple. And then I would ask, what was it that, if keto was working for you, what was it that got you off track? Was there something that happened?
Yeah,
Did it start to feel too restricted? Like what happened?
keto, my stomach started acting up with keto, and I kept trying to restart. I restarted like, I bet you 6 or 7 times because I was so committed to it. But my tummy just wasn't having it. I needed to get, oatmeal or potato or something in there to absorb whatever was causing the disruption. And so I haven't, and then I listened to a podcast on Food Junkies. I can't remember the lady's name, but she had talked about bipolar being, or not, pardon me, keto being a good food plan for people with bipolar. I'm not bipolar, but it just kind of, I can be very moody, I guess is the word I could use. And I thought to myself, well, maybe that's why I had that piece then. I don't know, but it just kind of crossed my mind.
Absolutely.
So right now, I mean, I try to, like I said, the whole plate, but I do try to still do a little bit lower carb, but I still like to have carbs. But at the same token, I'm not sure if some carbs, like grains, I mean, if they cause cravings. I've never gotten that deep into food journaling and stuff to figure out specific triggers other than the
The
basics of
obvious
flour and
offenders.
sugar. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think that right there is like maybe like worth your curiosity, right? Is figuring out, are there things that you're still consuming that are keeping you craving? Could it be some of these things? And it may be, and it may not be. Keto isn't for everybody. So there's this, just for anybody who maybe hasn't heard, right? There's this emerging field of nutritional psychiatry, and we've got Dr. Georgia Ede, we've got, Dr. Christopher Palmer, David Wiss. There are plenty of psychiatrists and nutritionists that are really into this research and using it right for to treat mental health concerns, things like bipolar, schizophrenia, and also like mood disorder in general, those kinds of things. And what we're finding is that while it is effective, it is very difficult to adhere to. Absolutely, for long periods of time, especially that like kind of like medical grade intervention. And even Dr. Palmer talks about how not everybody actually needs keto, just removing those ultra processed foods and and then making choices beyond that, like for like physical health too,
Yeah.
that a lot of people find that they have such significant improvement, they don't actually need to go to that you know um pharmaceutical grade keto level, so to speak, so just things to think about.
Yeah, and I think about even like last year at this time, I was quite abstinent, and it wasn't keto. It was just I was eating whole foods, and I remember feeling really good. Like that just sort of piqued my interest when I heard that. I find it's it's a lot of adjustment in the household when you go to do keto, so I'm not really prepared to do that right now. I like the idea of whole foods. Like to me that just makes sense. I mean there might be some combinations in there, like I mean I think forever salsa and sour cream is going to be a trigger for me, even though
Just
even
because
though
it's attached to tortilla chips,
it
or
maybe, but and like the savoriness of the combination, like I think, and just because I used it for so long too, right? Like there's things like that because I've tried to like, well, they're whole foods, I'll eat it, but then I end up overeating, and like I can't have peanut butter in the house. Like I love peanut butter, and I would love to just have some on an apple once in a while, but it just peanut butter. It's like I turn into another person. I just
Right. Yeah. So there are things that you're kind of starting to identify beyond just sugar and flour. And it's a matter of saying, like, okay, as much as I would like to be able to moderate these things, history has proven, at least to this point, that's not something that I'm able to do. Now, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know that that's forever and ever, amen. However, we know for you right now, it sounds like those are things that, like, yeah, if they're turning you into a different person, like, is that worth it when we think about what you just shared about your big why, you
That's
know?
right. That's right. And that's where, and I think sometimes I'm, even though I know I've said that I do a lot of mirror work and stuff, I still think there's a bit of a, how do I want to say, like a disconnect, and I want to make the connect where I'm not, the disconnect being like I don't pause or whatever, like I want to make the connection. So back to bringing the plan in, that just will, having something to grab easy will help make that connection,
Yeah,
the
maybe
better
even just the
self-awareness.
act, absolutely, and I'm thinking, like, maybe even just the act of, like, writing these things out, like, the if then situation, and then, like, the reminder, like, what you're going to do, like, in case of anger, and, like, flip it over, like, what are you going to do? Like, what skills are you going to use or whatever? I almost wonder if, like, just the act of you doing something like that, like, would be reminder, or, sticking a sticky note somewhere or something along those lines. But absolutely, I think you're right. It's that pause, right? Because we just need that 90 seconds, and I think about my kids are a bit younger. They're not quite teenagers. They're 10 and 7. So it wasn't all that long ago that we were watching Daniel Tiger on PBS Kids in the morning at our house, right? And and there's songs for everything these days, right, with parenting. And in that they really teach kids how to, like, take that deep breath and count before they say or do the next thing, right? And that's what we're talking about when we talk about the pause. And Clarissa does a really good job of talking about the 90-second pause, right? It just takes, like, that 90 seconds, because what's happening is we're emotionally hijacked, right? That back part of our brain, that amygdala and limbic system is just, like, on fire, and it's shutting everything down. Well, this is where our decision making power is, and it's being flooded. So no wonder we can't say, like, okay, I've paused, now what do I do? And there's, like, a blank answer, right? Because
Right.
it's shut down. Your brain has decided it's not safe if you stop and think about it. You just need to act. And it feels impulsive because it is, but it's, like, impulsive out of, like, survival. So something's not feeling safe, right? You're being activated. So yeah,
Right.
anytime that, like, so even if it could be just be like, oh, I'm feeling that way and I know I need to pause, and you're like, no cards or whatever it might be, right? Or, oh, quick, um, count to 10, just practicing that before you're in that hijacked place. Because I really love what you're saying about the mirror work too. And so that's almost like a level up skill. It's like you skipped in some ways some of this other stuff, but I'm loving that. And I want to know more about it, because obviously that's a part of your life now. Are there, can you kind of talk about, like, now that you've expanded beyond just this, like, weight loss journey or address the weight kind of journey, what is, like, your recovery life like? So you talked about adding mirror work. Like, how did you do that? Like, how could I do that if that's something I wanted to do? What else have you incorporated as part of your recovery?
Well, the mirror work, how that came about, it was about a year ago, and I I don't even I can't even remember why it came to me. Like I wanted to do, it wasn't mirror work specifically. I wanted to do like a self-love something, like program of something. I knew there had to be something out there. I had a friend talk about one before, and she sent me some links, and everything was quite costly. And I was like, oh gosh, okay, I don't, at that time I couldn't really pay for anything that was that costly. And I came across, I typed in free. I think I just typed in free self-love, and I came across this lady out of, she's in Arizona, I think. And she has a 12-week self-love program that, and honestly, I never did the whole 12 weeks, but I probably did about 5 weeks. And it started with mirror work. And it was basically, your first day was apologizing to yourself, and for all the things you may have done to yourself that like, I mean, if I can just kind of sum it up quickly, what, like, some things I might have said were like, I apologize to myself for not treating my body with respect by giving it junk food, and not, and being absent from, I had a lot of guilt around being absent from my daughter's life, because before recovery, I did a lot of sleeping. Like that was, I would eat and sleep and go to work and eat and sleep. That was basically it. So just apologizing for those kinds of things. And then, and it's emotional. Like it's not like I'm talking here like it's kind of rolling off my tongue easily, but it's not. It's definitely hard in the beginning. It's awkward. Like you're like, ew, I don't want to talk to myself. Ew, because she wants you to do this in front of a mirror. And then she also had some self-affirmations and some meditation and breathing work that you could do along with it, and then some journaling ideas and stuff. So I did that and I loved it. And then um about I want to say it was in June or something, she did a 21-day self-love challenge. So every day we would meet on Facebook Live and basically do mirror work. And of course, because we would just see her on the live, it's not like you were in front of anybody, so you were sitting with yourself in the mirror and you were just typing in comments. But it was really great. And you just, for me, I just feel it's almost like I feel so uplifted after I do it. Like I feel like I can almost conquer anything. So that's one thing that I really love to do. I'm not doing it as often as I would like to right now. It's I would say I'm doing it probably about half the time I would like to. But I also feel like sometimes you don't need it every day. Like I don't know. It's something I really truly believe in. I feel like in the beginning, it's probably good to get to do it a lot, like the 21 days. And then I just stopped. Like after that, I didn't continue it. I think I had a trip or something. Yeah, I went to visit my parents and then I just kind of I never went back to it. With that being said, she also has a book where you can follow. It's 90 days and you can follow each page. So I've got that and I've been working on that. So doing that kind of work is important to me, and I find that it really keeps me motivated as well, to stay on the road of recovery. I really like meditation as well. I probably do it. I wouldn't say I do it every day, because on the weekends I probably don't do it, but I do like to do it right before work on the weekdays. I find it just, I don't know, it just brings me some clarity for the day. It's almost like a cup of coffee. You feel kind of, you feel a little burst of energy after. And it's really helps with mindfulness as well. And the other thing I picked up also about a year ago, or a little more, because it was before Christmas last year, I started exercising finally. I started very, very slow, like literally. It's called a QB. It's like a thing where you can sit and pedal, like an elliptical sort of. And so I started on that, literally 2 minutes. Within, I don't know, a week, I was at 5 minutes. Next thing I know, I was at 10 minutes. And then I was at 15. And then it was boring. And I had to switch to something else. So now I just do YouTube. YouTube has a plethora of workout videos. I found great ones for me because I need something low impact for my knees. So that is one thing I don't let go of, because I know that the moment I don't work out, first my joints hurt and then my mood goes. And then with my mood, then all recovery goes out the window. Like even trying to be hopeful and in it goes out the window. So I keep myself moving. And yeah, those are probably the main things to me right now. What I would like to do a little more of for myself is I'd like to do a little more journaling. I've been hearing tidbits about writing from Stats. I don't know if you saw that on Netflix. His therapist talked about writing. I'm a good writer, and it doesn't even have to be good, because at this point, it's not like I'm sharing it with anybody. It's just for me, but I'm a good writer. And I feel like if I did more of that, I really think it would be helpful for me, because it would just be that release of getting stuff out. And the more I share, it's part of the reason I did this too. The more I share, the better I feel also. It in a sense holds me accountable, but at the same time, I just find knowing that I'm not alone, and anybody that sees this, knowing that they're not alone either, I think is so helpful, because for so long, like this phrase I had along with, I can't do it, was, what the F is wrong with me? And there's nothing wrong with me. I learned coping mechanisms really that turned into an addiction, and there's nothing wrong with me. And now it's up to me to get out of it and make a life worth living. I really love that. Like when people say, oh, you only live once, I love the little meme that it's Charlie Brown and Snoopy, and it's instead of no, you only die once, we live every single day. And I truly believe that. I think living rather than surviving makes such a huge difference. And I think it's something we really need to model to our kids too, because especially now with the phones, like it's so easy to just survive with your phone, right? Because I'll just put on a video or whatever to survive. And then what are they doing? Mindlessly eating or drinking or whatever. So I think it's really important. But it's a hard thing to shift, because even with my daughter, she never wants to give up her phone. But I can model it. And I feel like we do what our parents did. Like it just is. Like I see it so much. And that's the only thing I can do right now is model it for her.
Absolutely. So I'm wondering, so we heard like about the mirror work, meditation, movement, body movement, and how that's kind of progressed. And that's what kind of like these main kind of recovery themes have come up since you've started, working on that stuff. What do you do daily? Are there things that you do daily that are kind of like necessary for you to feel your best, other than like these three kind of major things? Do you have like a morning routine and an evening routine? Do you food prep? Do you plan your food? Do you just wing it every day? Like what works for you like in the day-to-day kind of stuff?
Definitely meal prep helps a lot. I find if I don't meal prep, I'm winging it. I'm ordering out way more than I want to or should be. But definitely meal prep. Water. I think water is like, that's always kind of my first thought when I have a craving is have a swig of water, have some water. I like to get in, well, at least 2 liters a day, sometimes 3, depending how much movement I've done. And I mean, I don't really have an evening routine, and that's what I'm kind of trying to get going to, because right now or forever my routine has just been, make dinner, Netflix, and watch TV and mindlessly eat. So I want to get away from that. In the morning, my routine is get up, feed the cat, brush the cat, have a tea, sit on my balcony for a little bit, and meditate about 50 minutes before work and get about my day. I used to work out in the morning, but I've discovered that if I do it in the afternoon, I sleep better. So I'm making that shift. And it's a little bit of a struggle because I don't want to do it as much in the afternoon. Like in the mornings, I'm like, yeah, raw, get it done. But in the afternoons, it's a bit of I still get it done, but I put it off a little bit longer than I would if it was the morning. But those meal prep, what else would be? And I think where I'm at right now too is trying to figure out those things that keep me going too. Like before, it was always kind of like you would have a date, right? Like there would be, say, a wedding was coming up or a graduation or whatever, and you want to, that would keep you motivated. Right now, I'm kind of using Mexico for that, but I'm also finding that I think that's kind of a roadblock by using that because I don't know, it's like, because that's like my old diet thinking, I guess, my diet mentality. But and you know what, tuning into something, whether it be a sweet sobriety meeting, whether it be a podcast or an OA meeting, tuning into something, it just kind of, and you don't always have to like share on these meetings. I don't find that that's always necessary, but just tuning in and just hearing. And then you can kind of, for me, it's kind of like you take a deep breath and you're like, oh, okay, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not alone. Okay, good. But I'm in the right place, right? Like keeping yourself in a community is so important. And it took me a really long time to really accept that. Like my mentality of I can do it by myself was just so strong. And then I don't know if I just remember one day, I think I just said it to myself. I could hear Dr. Phil, how's that working for you? And I was like, it's really not. Like, that's why I need, okay, I need community. And I still struggle with reaching out, like, but like it's almost like it's shame, I guess. Like, I don't want to reach out. I don't want to tell anybody that I might be having a craving because maybe I don't have willpower. Maybe I don't, what's wrong with me? Always back to those same things. But I do work on it more. And I find the more I reach out and the more I talk in these, in the communities and stuff, it gets easier and it's more relaxing and you feel relaxed is a good word for it. Like it's a safe space. Like, so, if you go out, there's so much, in other communities that are different, there's a lot of judgment or there's a lot of lack of knowledge or whatever. And I was sort of, I had met some new friends in my community, which was really nice, but I found I was drinking a little more and that didn't really help my situation. So I'm like, no, I'll still go out and socialize, but I really want to tone down the alcohol because I find it puts me into like the next day. I just want all the carbs possible. And I don't want that. Like I find definitely breads and stuff are really hard on my joints. So I find that staying away from them is better for me. And alcohol was just not helping with that. And I think it was just kind of like, isn't there a name for that where you just sort of shift the addiction? Like
Yeah, cross addiction.
there you go. Yeah. So I feel like that's sort of what was happening and I mean, it's so easy because alcohol loosens you up and you can be more social. Right. And I would rather do that without alcohol. Like I'm a bit of a shy person. But I can be outgoing. I don't need the alcohol. It was just kind of like I was blending in. I was just doing what they were doing. And it's not what I want to do. So it brings me back to being in this community where I feel safe and I feel heard and whatnot.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, people, it's really funny. Like I get asked to be on podcasts or interviewed, or even just clients will say like, hey Molly, like, how do you know if somebody's going to be successful? And I've been in the field, mental health and addiction, since 2005. And this is all anecdotal. I don't have any like research on this or hard numbers. But I've found that, and again, please keep in mind, everybody, like successful it's all bio individual. Like whatever success means for an individual is what success means for an individual. It has nothing to do with what I think is a measure of success. But the people that I think like get to where they want to be and are satisfied or content, right, feeling that peace, that freedom, is that they have quality support. It's not even necessarily quantity, right? Like it's not, I'm necessarily going to 90 meetings in 90 days or 3 meetings a day for the rest of my life or whatever it might be, but that it's quality support, that they have allies in the home, right? People who are not going to like try to peer pressure them into having the drink or, having the food or whatever it might be. But then having those people that they can rely on, that they don't have to show up and ever explain themselves because they just get it. Like when we're in those, right? Like when we're in treatment group, you don't ever have to show up, Daryl, and be like, oh, this one time, blah, 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 whatever, because of whatever. Like we never have to like over explain ourselves, right? Like, we can just say what we're going through, what we're working on, and people just get it.
Yeah.
And that's quality when we, especially when we start making connections within those groups, like you look forward to hearing from or seeing or connecting with in some way, specific people. That's when you start to find that quality. And honestly, that's been like, if I could say the number one thing that I can think of when people say like, describe a successful client or a successful story, would be, these people who found that. And it sounds like you are on your way to making that true for yourself.
I think so. I've made some good connections and there's still more to make. Like I don't think it ends there just because I found one person or a couple people that are great supports. Right. So, I think service, even though, but I kind of went to OA for a while and I was like, service, I don't want to be a sponsor. I don't really want to, which is so funny because it kind of contradicts what I said earlier about I'm doing this meeting because I want to be a support or an inspiration or what have you. Like if I can do it, so can you. Like nobody's alone. But for some reason that was so intimidating to me and I was like, oh, I don't know. But I feel like service, like, and when I say service, I don't necessarily mean food addiction related. I mean, like I've lost in total. I could be more, but the last time I checked, it was 75 pounds. And so of course I had a bunch of clothes to get rid of, and lots of them, some still had price tags on, and it was in relatively good shape. So I didn't just want to give it to the secondhand, to any old secondhand store. I reached out and gave it to like it's like a transition house for women in domestic situations. So I donated it there, which made my heart feel full. And then, at Christmas, I got a new tree, so I donated my old one. So my heart felt full. Like those kinds of things I find are helpful too, because I've kind of been in situations where I probably could have needed those clothes, and it just feels good to know that I can give back because I have taken, for lack of a better word, from those sources before. So it's nice to be able to give back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think you nailed it too, right? It's that service work. It's the getting outside of ourselves. It's that community service. It's the showing up and paying it forward that we didn't get to where we are today 100% on our own. Even if that's the story we want to tell, that just isn't true. Somewhere along the line, we had a mentor, or an adult that showed up and like believed in us, or right, or somebody along the way was like,
That's
I
right.
see you in a totally different way than you see you, and that's inspiring to us to be like, want to do better or make different choices and change our lives or whatever it might be. And so yeah, absolutely, when you do something like this, when you come on here and you share your story, or you donate your clothes in a very specific way, or you donate a Christmas tree, whatever it might be, donate to the food bank, money for the food, whatever it might be, that is you getting outside of yourself. That's you having empathy for others who, right, are going through a rough patch, probably no fault of their own, most likely no fault of their own.
That's
And
right.
they just need somebody to provide dignity and, right, like that hand up, not that handout. Like we're not trying to say like, oh, like sympathy. It's empathy and compassion. And the more we can do that for others, it's really interesting, right? Because then we can start to like use that same skill to turn it back and use that on ourselves. Like
Right.
if I can give a complete stranger compassion and empathy, I don't even need to know their whole story. I just know that they need help and I love them exactly as they are. And I'm willing to provide something that they don't have without any strings attached. I can figure out how to do that for me too.
Right. Right. That makes a lot. I never really made that connection. That's interesting. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know that I've taken up a lot of your time. And before you go, just like on the podcast, we have a signature question for the Sweet Sobriety Stories. So I'm wondering, what did you need to hear when you were first starting out, or maybe even something along your journey? Like, is there like some words of wisdom maybe that you can leave us with?
You're not alone. That's my first one, is because I truly believed I was alone and there was something wrong with me. So you're not alone and there's nothing wrong with you. And yeah, and just be open to the process, like, because there's scary things that come up, right? Because you're stuffing down feelings. Be open to the process and what comes along with it, because it's scary for sure, but it's well worth it once you get past it.
Oh, thank you so much, Daryl. I love that. It's a beautiful message, and I know that the people who need to hear it are going to hear that. So I appreciate you and thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
If you like what you heard today, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.